Our devotion today is from Exodus chapter 31. Before we look at it, remember today to be praying for the Neal family. That is Mike and Christina, and Gabriel and Judah, and little baby Hattie that was just born. So we're skipping ahead several chapters today to Exodus chapter 31. God has been giving the Israelites his law, how he expects them to live. Moses is up on the mountain. He's receiving those stone tablets, written by the finger of God. And in Exodus chapter 31, we see the end of him giving this law. And chapter 31 is broken, I would say, into two parts. In the first part of the chapter, God is talking about these craftsmen that he has called to build the Ark of the Covenant. And in the second part of the chapter, he's talking about the Sabbath day. And I think there's great stuff in both of these parts of this chapter. Of course, I love the part about the Sabbath because here he's not specifically talking about how he wants the Israelites to keep the Sabbath, but he's talking about the why. He's talking about how the Sabbath day is a testimony about who God is and what he did for them. How he chose the Israelites. He made them his people. But it wasn't something that the Israelites could have done for themselves. It wasn't something that they could have worked for. It wasn't about their goodness. It was about the goodness of God and his unmerited favor that he's pouring out on them. And that's why it's so important that they keep the Sabbath. They're testifying about who God is and what he's done for them and how he made them holy. But, as I read through this chapter, it was really the first part that just stood out to me today. As God is talking about these craftsmen and how he chose them and how he put this gifting inside of them. He says, talking about this one guy, he says, I filled him with the Spirit of God and with wisdom and creativity, and he has all these giftings. And I've called him to use those giftings to serve me and to glorify me. And I just think that is really incredible. We all know people who are gifted artistically, gifted in building stuff. Maybe they're a carpenter, or maybe they're gifted at fixing stuff. Maybe they're gifted in music. And it's incredible to me because sometimes we call these just natural giftings, or we think about they're just things that people have practiced and they've gotten good at. And yet we see here in Scripture the giftings we have are absolutely gifts from God. They're things that he is calling us to use to glorify him. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, when we think about gifts that glorify God, sometimes we narrow that field down way too much. We think about someone who's gifted musically. Well, of course, that person can use that gift to glorify God, right? We'll put them up in front of the church on Sunday and let them sing. And yet here we've got this person who they're a gifted craftsman, building, doing, laying the gold and silver and whatever else they needed to do to build this ark. God has put gifts in each one of us. They're not the same, and yet he can call us and is calling us to use those gifts to glorify him. It might be drawing. It might be painting. It could be whatever. It might be plumbing. What has God put in you? What has he given you that he wants you to serve him with? I am thankful that we serve a creative God. And when we're creative and when we use that to glorify him, we're doing exactly what he's called us to do. I'm thankful for this passage today. I pray that God has spoken something to you out of it. If he has, leave us a message on Facebook and on YouTube and minister to one another. God bless.